What is up, everyone, and welcome to Feezy's Media. I'm Jay Feezy, and this is That One Movie. This is a series of videos where me and some guests do a deep dive on a particular movie, and in this case, it's probably, as you can tell, that one movie with giant sandworms. No, I'm not talking about Beetlejuice. I'm talking about that movie that's so hot right now. Everyone's talking about it. Well, so hot at the time of this stream here. But yep, it's Dune Part 2. And with me to discuss this movie, to do a deep dive, to go pretty deep. I don't know how deep we'll go. We'll see. Sand dune deep. I don't know. But with me for this, we'll go and get through it. I have here Marco 16Fix. Marco, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic today. Yeah, really looking
Nice.
forward to having this conversation. This movie has been on my mind for, days, going on weeks now. So really, really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. I know we've been texting back and forth, and I know you had some thoughts. So, yeah, you as well as others, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Heck
But
yeah, and
with
we'll go
that,
deep, not too deep, but enough to get the job done. So
yeah. Yeah, sounds good. With that, let me bring in my next guest, the man with the plan. I'm sure you all heard and seen him. This is Shane, or as you like to call him, 1 6 figure focus, or Maldeep, the man himself. How you doing, Shane?
لسه قايد.
Yeah, it's not guy yet.
Um,
How you doing, man?
I'm actually loving that sound effect. And one of the many sound effects that we're probably going to be talking about later on today. You can't do science fiction without bloody good sound effects, you know? Think of Star
Yes,
Wars.
sir.
But thanks very much for the invite. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'd say I got to echo what Marco said. This movie has been on my mind since I saw specifically the second one. It's opened up a can of worms, and I'm really looking forward to having a
Yeah,
good
man.
chat about it.
Yeah, yeah. Likewise. So one more. So it wouldn't be, we don't have a trio, we have a quartet, if you will. And to round us out, we have here Jose G in the house. What is up, Jose?
Hey man, it's good to be here. First time streaming with you, which I've been wanting to do for a while. So I'm glad that you invited me. I got a little nervous when you invited Marco and he talked about being my replacement. So I got a little nervous there, but I'm glad I made the cut. So I'm excited, man. Same thing. I've been thinking about the movie over and over again. I saw it again on Thursday. I was telling you about it. Did a little prep work there because you said you were
Yeah.
going to bring it, so I'm ready.
Nice. Yeah. So I know we're going to go into a little background on each of us real quick. But I know some of you have discussed it before on your own respective streams. And by the way, for all those watching or catching the replay, links, I'll have everyone's the links to all their social media, their YouTube down in the description below. So be sure to check that out. Marco, I apologize. I didn't have yours in as a last minute addition, but I'll put yours in afterwards. So
No worries at all.
be sure to get you in there. But yeah, so you discussed these before, so I figured we can go through here, kind of consolidate our thoughts, kind of piggyback a little bit, maybe share some thoughts that we haven't heard before, different perspectives, and yeah, just kind of just open discussion about films, this film in particular, but to kind of give some context to our audience and about who we are and why we're doing this stream. I figured we can kind of go around and just give a background on our a love of film and things like that. As you can all see already, we have some collectibles in the background, some more than others, some nicer than others. I'm probably on the bottom of that list of the nice list there, but but
I've
we
seen
all
that
have
collection room. It's very impressive.
oh, thank you. But yeah, so we all have collecting backgrounds, but our a love of collecting stems from either entertainment media, whether that be film, video games, TV shows. That from what it seems like, what we have in common for all of us is comes first. So, Marco, do you want to go ahead and give a context on your love of film and give a little bit more about background about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's actually something that I think about, maybe not quite often, but try to think as deep as I can on this topic, on why I love film so much. I think I could trace it back to my dad, like a lot of things, because I've, been slowly turning into him my entire life, but he's like a big movie fan. Like he loves sci-fi. In particular, huge fan of Star Wars, the one that introduced me to that. And
Yeah.
even though he doesn't get like so into the minutia of things, he's also a collector too. So he
Mm.
would collect, Star Wars figures, and we'd do various things together like that. So I think that's really where my love of cinema comes from. And I'm not like as intense as knowing all the directors and all the, hot actors, but I would say I've seen a lot of movies throughout my life. And I know what I really do like and what makes up those qualities of films that I do like. But
Mm.
sometimes, things are just intangible. It's like I'm watching Black Adam. I don't think it's particularly good, but I'm having a good time. So you
Yeah.
just never know how these things connect with people.
Yeah. And what typically what genre of film do you typically gravitate toward? I know you said sci-fi, but are there any others, or is it just
Yeah.
mostly sci-fi?
Honestly, I watch everything. I like, sci-fi, documentaries. Let's see, what other genres are comedy. I honestly will watch pretty much anything, even musicals. So yeah, so I think just it's a medium that really fascinates me and something that I've always, just been intrigued at not only movies coming out, but how they're made as well. So yeah, just
Yeah.
an overall love of cinema.
Yeah, man. Yeah, sounds like we did definitely share some thoughts on that one. Um, well, thanks for sharing that background, Jose. You're up, buddy. How about you? Can you give our good people here, our good listeners, uh, our audience, a little more background about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, very similar. I used to watch a lot of movies with my mom and my dad growing up. Just kind of what I would do. They put the TV, they put me in front of the TV, and they put something on, and that's kind of where it grew. I remember, not to give too much about about my childhood, but I remember one of the things I'd like doing, like that I remembered the most of like grade school, was that I'd like to do creative writing and write stories, fictional stories. And that
Nice.
was
Yeah.
kind of my favorite part of school that I remember in terms of creative writing. That's why I pursued, in terms of when I was going to school, when I thought about what do I like, what's something that if I could do a career, something that I'd like, and it was the pursuit of filmmaking.
Mm.
So, in particular, writing the stories. Going back to my childhood, writing these stories. So, I got my degrees in screenwriting and writing for film, things like that. So that's that's kind of where my focus is. So kind of my and that kind of pushes like everything else that I do. Everything my love for film kind of pushes my collecting. Uh, Everything that I do basically is kind of influenced by my love for film. So,
Nice. Yeah, that's right. And you did go to school for that, so thanks for adding that in there. So that's good to know. You have some of that knowledge and that know-how on how
yeah.
that some of that stuff works. That's good to know. Shane, of course, last but not least, I know you're a big film buff as well, just like we are. Do you mind giving us a little bit background on going further on your love of film or TV or media entertainment in general?
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Safe to say I wouldn't have a YouTube channel if it wasn't for my love of film. So much so that I'm trying to pronounce film correctly these days. I'm working on it. Um, yeah, just I probably wouldn't be collecting if it wasn't for my love of movies either. The first movie I've ever remember really loving was Batman '89, and I remember watching that with family. And I think going to the cinema with my mum and dad and sister was a big thing. It was a treat back in the day. And also, even if it's just maybe not going to the cinema, but just going up to my, say, grandfather's house or something like that. And if my parents went out and we had a babysitter, we were able to go and pick out some VHS and stuff like that. Actually, go to the shop and pick out VHS. And
Do you want to explain to Jose what that is?
Too many moving parts, literally.
Yes.
But so the it was kind of like one of those things that was just always there. It was kind of like whether it was at home or whether it was in say my grandfather's house, it was kind of like a treat if parents are going out and myself and my sister, we get to pick out like a movie or two and watch them and get some junk food and stuff like that. So I don't know, it's always specifically sci-fi, but like I'm like Marco there. I'll appreciate any well-made movie in the same way that any music, regardless of genre, written for the sake of creating art and getting elicit some sort of an emotional response for someone and not for just making money, is typically something I'll give a listen to. So
and I think I want to talk about that a bit too, like the intersection between making film and art, and how they're like often at odds, and like how this one is special because it's way different.
Sometimes you need a bit of a dictator in charge, man. I'm not saying that Denis Villeneuve is a dictator, but someone with a vision at least who's
a vision.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Yeah, thank you all for sharing that. So I think I'm kind of similar. I believe Shane and I are about the same age. Similar. I grew up in a generation where I want to say is borderline. I'll probably relate more to Gen X because for me, I was raised by TV. To be honest, my parents were working full time. We didn't have enough money for a babysitter, so most of the time when we were in school, I was at home, and we were watching TV. And so, just like Shane, we had some VHSs growing up. We had, the VCR. We recorded a lot of our stuff, and oh man, how I miss that, because you can just record anything, right? Like there's no DVR, like no DVDs. It's like obviously before that time, so you can just throw in a tape, record any movie or TV show, and which is what we did, and I can just watch that on repeat, multiple times. And so there's definitely some particular movies that I watched multiple times. And then of course whatever is on TV, like the local network or USA TBS, I always had those repeat movies. So I saw those multiple times. But and just so I just kind of grew into that, and there's a wide variety of movies that they showed, and because of that, my love for film expanded. My the variety, the genres, that I was exposed to just expanded from there. And and I kind of, it goes to all my other hobbies, right? Some of you who know me in the collecting community on my other channel, Feezy's Figures, I've mentioned multiple times, I collect multiple different figures of different scales, different IPs. My love for music's the same. It just spans multiple genres because there's just something for everybody, right? For every feeling, every mood, every type of person. And so, I just got into it all, from sci-fi, fantasy, horror, animation, anime, musicals, comedy, just all of it. There's just, like you guys were saying, sometimes there's just a certain movie that just calls to you and others that don't. I try to keep my mind open to new experiences and new art forms and just everything that's out there, because there's just so much, and it's just all awesome. It's all great. And so it evolved over time. Like Marco was saying, it was just entertainment watching when I was younger, but as I got older, I started appreciating more of the work that went into it and the details. And just in general, I kind of became a more detail-oriented person, and so I started looking out for those things in all art forms, right? Just all those minor details and the hard work that goes into all of that. And so that just helps my love of film, my appreciation of film grow over time until now. It's just, oh man, it's just awesome. Just I try to catch everything, and hence, why I wanted to do this, because there's so many things, this series, that one movie series, because there's a lot of aspects that I see in film that I want to discuss. In particular, this one, I kind of gave you all here, my panelists, an outline, because I have some thoughts on all of these topics. And so that's just something I just figured we all discuss, and maybe others have the same thoughts, or same or differing, opposing thoughts. So for those of you watching, thank you for joining, and those catching on the replay, please, as we go on, let us know what your thoughts and opinions are to anything that we're saying. Overall, we're just gonna kind of discuss, have a good time, not to take it too seriously, right? It's just something that we love. This movie's been on our minds for a while, so I figured we just come up together and talk about it. So real quick, let me go through the chat again. Thank you all for joining us on this fine Saturday. Well, here in the States, it's pretty fine Saturday. So hopefully it is for everyone else watching here. So we got the movie canon, Gio in the house. Hello guys, what is up, Gio? Thank you for joining us. Tijuana Mike in the house as well. Happy Saturday, gentlemen, and a fine happy Saturday to you, good sir. I think he's also in Cali here. All three of us here, except for Shane, actually are based in Cali. Yeah, so I don't know, what's the weather like over there right now, Shane? Is it nice or is it pretty cloudy?
No, it's awful. It's raining today.
Oh man,
the same way it's been raining for the last 40 years.
Oh, God.
No, actually, it's been raining. It's
yeah.
Movie Cat is following up with Arrakis Forever. Yeah, thanks again for joining us, and I'm sure we'll get more. But thank you again. All right, so real quick, I forgot to touch on this in the beginning, but the format of that one movie of this video series, I try to keep it pretty consistent. But what we're gonna do is I try to do a twofer, right? A 2-in-1. So we're gonna have the first part of it. We're gonna go through a non-spoiler discussion. I'll kind of share some information about the movie itself. We'll give our overall thoughts, and without spoiling anything, of course, for those who haven't seen the movie yet and just kind of want to hear our thoughts and opinions on that, or just see what we thought about it. And then after we're all done with that, then we'll go into the nitty-gritty and do a deep dive of all the other elements of this film that I was mentioning before, which include, sound, score, the editing, the story, or the writing, cinematography, acting, all that stuff. We'll get into in that spoiler discussion, just so we can give specific examples and details and things like that. All right, so with that, gentlemen, are you ready? Let's
do this
thing. All right, here we go. So let me go ahead and share. I got my little slideshow here. All right, so Dune part 2. I didn't get a chance to do part 1 because obviously this channel was created after that, but just to provide some little information on the crew here. So most of you might know, for those of you that don't, director Denis Villeneuve. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies, Mr. Villeneuve, if I'm not, Mr. V, if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But who, for those of you who are not familiar, he also did the ones that I've seen anyways, Blade Runner 2049 and Sicario. Both movies, I picked those two movies because those are the ones I actually really liked, I really enjoyed. And I'll come back to Blade Runner 2049 in particular here a little bit later on. But so director, also written by Denis Villeneuve and John Spats. Apologies, Mr. John. I'll just go with Mr. S. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So it looks like they did like a tag team combo on that. Director of photography, I had to bring him up just because we're going to bring him up here in the stream and he deserves to be recognized. Greg Fraser. Some of his other works, again, I picked in particular that I've seen, that I am familiar with. The Batman and Rogue One. Fun fact, trivia fact, he won his first Oscar for Dune Part 1. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I read, that's where I heard, which I was impressed with. I was surprised. I'm like, wow. For the quality of work that he does, I'm surprised that was his first time for Dune Part 1. He also won an Emmy for doing an episode of The Mandalorian, Chapter 7. I believe that one's called The Reckoning. I can't remember which exactly that episode that was, but yeah, so he won an Emmy for that. So he has an Emmy and an Oscar in the belt. So good for him. Actually, let me do him justice here. Where is he at? There we go. Good job, Greg. He deserves this. All right, so general thoughts. I think I've talked enough, so we'll go ahead and start from the bottom here. Jose, I know you've all seen this movie twice, I believe. Marco hasn't. No, actually. Oh yeah, me and Marco are the only two who haven't seen it twice. So
yeah,
you
hopefully
guys
twice soon.
Yeah, same. But Jose, we'll start with you. So go ahead and give us your general thoughts on this film now that you've seen it twice, and just any impressions overall.
Yeah, man, incredible. It's just the cinematic experience that you have with this film. It sticks with you. It's why we're all still talking about it. How long did it release? It's been like 2-3 weeks now since it released, and we're still talking about it. We're still talking about the experience we had. We're still talking about the memes. We're still talking about the popcorn bucket. We're still talking about this era of Dune that we're experiencing right now. So just in general, man, it was a film that, like I said, stays with you, and you're still thinking about all the ins and outs, all the performances, the cinematography, the music. You find yourself listening to the score over and over again, and it's just it's like one of these film experiences that I feel like we've been lacking for a while. We haven't had a movie like that in a minute. That kind of feels like the broad audience is accepting, not just the film buffs, not just the general audience, but almost everyone universally is behind this movie. So I mean, I loved it. I'm excited to talk more about it in detail with you guys, and I was like in awe, like experiencing that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Shane, what about you? Overall thoughts and impressions after now having seen it twice as well?
Overall, I've seen it 3 times.
Oh, three times. Okay.
Yeah, I saw it today again for the third time in IMAX. The first time I saw it regular cinema on an opening weekend.
Mm.
It was on a big screen and all that, but it wasn't IMAX. And then the second and third time I saw it in IMAX. And I watched the first one yesterday for the third time, kind of ironically, um, which is it. And I got it's weird. This movie, the second one, is becoming a borderline obsession. I got more out of that third movie yesterday than I had the first two watches of it, because a lot of the things that happen in the second one, there's little hints in the first one that connect
Mm.
it, that really show that this guy he has a plan in mind, and I'm hoping that there will be, when we see the third one, Messiah, that we look back at the second one and there's these little gems that are like, all right, he knew all along where he was going with this. So
Mm.
yeah, look, first, just on the second movie, look at the first movie, I remember thinking I didn't love it. 3 stars out of 5. I don't think my score now would be much different. Maybe bump it up to 3.5 or 4. But I didn't love it. There's a lot of things I loved about it. The usual things: the Hans Zimmer score, the sound engineering, the special effects, composition, cinematography, and all that stuff. But the second one, straight away, I was like, right, this is a monster right here. And I came out of the cinema and I was cautious, because first thing I saw out of the cinema was this IMDb, giving this score. This is the greatest movie ever made. It's the highest rating IMDb movie ever. And I thought, no, that's recency bias, smaller sample size, and the people that are voting are absolutely in love with this movie, and I can see why. But I give it like a cautious 4 stars. But then I couldn't stop thinking about it since I saw it, and I've seen it twice since. And now I'm thinking, okay, it's not a 4 star movie. It's 4.5, maybe a 5.
Oh.
Um, yeah, and I think it will stand the test of time. But all that being said, I do not think this is the greatest movie ever made, and I do not think it's the greatest science fiction movie ever made. I think it's one of the greatest science fiction movie, but that is a fairly big distinguish, or differential, whatever you want to call it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I'm at the moment. Um,
Okay.
it will stand the test of time, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. It's making an impact. I mean, yeah, just like I mentioned before, it's just all over pop culture right now in almost every aspect. So it's taking over.
Mm.
But yeah,
It
I
it
think I
it,
would.
it doesn't hurt this movie that we, in the last year or two, we've seen atrocities like, again, no offense if these are your favorite movies or whatever, like Thor: Love and Thunder and She-Hulk and stuff like that, like the
You didn't even say Madam
yeah.
Web.
No, because I haven't seen it and I never will. Yeah, there's yeah,
That
without
I might be.
escape,
That's
my
what I might
eyelids
be doing.
closed. So
I
but
might be doing that right after this,
Shane
honestly.
loved the Marvels.
yeah, but you know what I'm saying. The standard has been low,
Yes.
so that
Mm.
helps this movie, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's something that yeah, I had posted my initial thoughts on this on my Facebook page, and I had someone who commented mentioned that as well. And I mean that it didn't occur to me, but when he said it, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, you saying that as well kind of shows, yeah, that kind of bring to light, hey, what movie are the general audience comparing to, like those who are saying this is a masterpiece, this is one of the greatest movies ever, like what, yeah, what's their bar, what are they just kind of
Mm,
comparing it to, movies that came out recently, the two that you just named already, and maybe
mm,
others that weren't that great. So and that could definitely play a factor, I can see that. So but
mm,
I know you've said this in your streams before, Shane, that it's kind of hard to say, right? You kind of have to let it sit a little, um, and kind of simmer down, take some time, and see, if it does still hold up there even after the hype dies down. I was like, okay, are you still thinking about it? Are you still?
That's the real test.
Yeah, it is. No, I agree. I
And
agree with you.
I think like you shouldn't let kind of people influence how you feel about a piece of art,
Hmm.
whether it's an album from a rock album or a
Yeah,
painting or a six scale head sculptor, in this case a movie. The only thing that should influence how you feel about the movie is the movie itself. You
yep,
need to kind of,
Shane,
it's hard to do, but you need to,
you know,
yeah.
yeah, I do agree with you, but I do think that you can be influenced in a way by people's opinions because sometimes it's like, okay, I didn't necessarily love this, but I'm really curious to know why others do love it, right? So sometimes you kind of listen to that feedback of like, oh, Jose loved it for XYZ reason, Shane loved it or forgave it for these reasons. I kind of want to rewatch it in a different lens and maybe I'll feel different
You'll
about
give
it,
it a
right? That
second chance, but we do that
there you
with
go.
people, don't we? That guy's an
Yeah.
asshole. Oh no, give him a chance. He's fine once you get to know him. And
Yeah.
then sometimes he's still an asshole. You know
Sometimes,
what I
yeah, for
mean?
sure.
But yeah, we're still
honestly,
friends,
yeah.
Marco.
Yeah.
I will say that about
At least you know
I will
for
say that about
yourself.
like there you go. Like the first Venom film. It's like I didn't like it the first watch. Everyone said, "Oh, it's actually like a really interesting film. Like it's fun." I rewatched it again. I'm like, "No, this
You
is
need to
not
read the
for me."
book.
Yeah, there you go. I need to read,
Yeah. Yeah.
years of comic books to
I mean,
understand it. So,
if you read the Lethal Protector comic, that's
I
exactly how Venom is
see.
portrayed.
This is that type of guy right here. That's Jose
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
You don't know enough about it to appreciate it, but
No,
sometimes that can
no,
be true, though.
but the film should work as a standalone film, regardless
Yeah,
whether you read the comic or not. And I
I
always
agree.
will
definitely.
say that. I do think you'll
Yeah,
have more of an
I
appreciation
agree.
of the film
I agree.
if you've read the book or you've seen part one. Then you'll have an appreciation for this film more
yeah,
than someone who just goes in and I'm just going to watch part two without watching part one, without any context, without reading the book. You have a
Hmm.
different experience. I think that's valid.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. And, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I agree, but and that's also that's a good balance, right? That's what a good writer and or director can do, right? Is kind of balance both those worlds. Those who know the source material really well, and those who are just like have none of that background, but they still like the film, right? There's, the example that comes to mind. I don't know if you guys seen this, but One Piece, the live action on Netflix. I've never seen the anime, but I went in there watching that, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. And I think I've heard generally positive things from people who've seen the anime on that. Like there was a good transition
yeah,
that they did from the anime to live action, and yeah, it was just a show I really like. So I don't know if the verdict's still out now, but you guys again let me know in the chat or in the comments if those of you who actually have seen the anime who actually like that show. But yeah, so that's it could be a testament also to good writing, or a good screenplay or a good director, just making that transition to please both that audience
yeah.
there. But I will, since real quick before I get to you, Marco, on your general thoughts. Um, you mentioned Madam Web, and there's two similarities here that I'm going to make to Madam Web with this movie. So I have my shield ready for all those tomatoes and that cabbage you're going to throw at me later on, but I'm ready.
No.
Got my
You shouldn't be apologetic about a feeling. Like Shane was saying, if you like that art piece, right? It's like we go to a museum, right? And it's this
yeah,
ugly portrait, but you're like, hey, it speaks to me in some way, even though
Yeah,
everyone says it's the ugliest portrait I've ever seen in my life. But for you, it's like, hey, kind of reminds me of this, or I got a feeling about this that
kind of
others.
looks like Shane.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But there are, yeah. Thank you for that, Jose. But yeah, there's two things that I was going to point out. One of them has to do, you're right, with the movie, and just like I mentioned, I kind of look at all aspects of a film, not just what's at face value. And there's some things that I liked about Mad Web, some things I didn't, and the same goes for this movie here. Like I said, we'll get into it more. But Marco, overall thoughts, impressions on Dune Part Two.
Yeah, so no, but really well said, Jose. In terms of this is art, we're all going to have different viewpoints on this. So I think it's a minor miracle that this film exists, right? Because Denis, like his films don't necessarily make a lot of money, and obviously Dune One may have, but the whole pandemic really messed it up. And
Mhm.
so this guy might have been canned, a long time ago under different leadership, but somehow he's kind of snuck by or continued to make like really like his vision. It feels like his vision on film. So I think that can be for good and for bad, right? The first time I saw part one, it didn't really connect with me. But I think that's because I didn't know too much about Dune, and he doesn't explain that much. Like it's just kind of like, hey, this is what's going on. It doesn't even we don't even know
Yep.
about the AI war. I mean, maybe they have a throwaway line, but I knew nothing of that until talking to someone who had read the book. And I'm like,
Yep.
okay, this is let me watch it again with a renewed vision. So I really loved Blade Runner 2049. So I was like, okay, Dune 1 is going to be incredible. It fell flat for me. I started hearing the buzz about part two, kind of the pre-release buzz, and I was like,
Mhm.
okay, let me brush up a bit more on the world of Dune and then rewatch part one. And I loved like this. My second rewatch of part one, I was like, okay, now I'm getting this. Like this movie is like really incredible. Yes, it's slow. Like yeah, there's plenty of opportunities to fall asleep, but like if you go into it like fresh and with a good perspective of what it's gonna lead to, which is like a end of only one part of a story. And I think that was kind of another frustrating thing the first time I saw it. But so connected with me. I was really excited to see part two, and I will say I did really enjoy part two. But I guess we'll get into all the details. Um, I think that they crammed so much into part two versus part one being, a little bit more
Yep.
methodical that
Yep.
I feel like I almost enjoy part one a bit more. That being said, I changed my mind on part one, and so I'm hoping a rewatch might, bump this up from a four territory, like an incredible piece, to maybe I feel like it could be closer to a masterpiece. So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've got mostly only positive things to say, minus it just being so jam packed with story. So.
Mm. Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. And before I get into my overall general thoughts, uh, I forgot to ask for those of you watching, if you don't mind letting us know how we sound, if the music's too loud or if our audio's isn't loud enough. Yeah, please let us know so we make sure that we're coming through okay for you all and for those catching the replay. Thank you again for all those who are doing that. I will have timestamps in the description below after the stream, so you guys can kind of jump to any section. And if you want to go catch replay, or if you already seen this and you want to go back to a particular section, save you some time there and help you all out with that. So yeah, just let us know how we're sounding there, and for those in the chat. Speaking of, we got Agent Silver Fox in the house joining us. What is up, Ian? Big shout out to everyone, bar
Boo.
the Irish guy. Hail to the fact
He's
checker.
annoyed because
Yeah.
because Ireland beat Scotland today in the rugby and won the Six
Oh,
Nations.
I see.
Sucks
Yeah.
to suck.
Cheers, Ian.
Cheers. Yeah. And the Empire Strikes just joined us. Thank you for coming in, Phil. Appreciate you coming through. Um, yeah. So again, just to reiterate, we're in the non-spoiler discussion right now. We're gonna go into the spoiler discussion here in a little bit. But before we do that, I'm gonna give my thoughts, my general thoughts and impressions, and maybe hear what the others have to say if they want to kind of add to anything that I brought up. So, um, so yeah, I would say right off the bat, I thought this movie was really good. um Kind of to what I think it was Shane was saying earlier, don't let anyone influence you. Before I went to go see it, I think it was a few days after it came out, I was already hearing the buzz. And this movie's a masterpiece, it's great, 10 out of 10. And so I try to block those out of my mind, and kind of go in anything with an open mind. I did the same thing for Madam Web. um and even though people were bashing left and right, same thing with Morbius, right? It was just a bash fest. I just went in there still with an open mind, and I'm glad I did. I got to experience those, and again, there's certain aspects that I liked about those films, and certain ones that I didn't. This one, overall, I agree with it, what everyone's saying. Sound, score, cinematography, those are all on point. I would probably rate those up there. The only minor gripe I had with the sound is that at certain points it was too loud. It was like overpowering, like the dialogue and some other aspects maybe.
Where's the Grandpa Simpson meme? Turn it down.
Yeah, turn it down, get off my lawn.
It was turn it up, turn it up.
But the way, like the actual design of the sound, was really awesome. And again, we'll go into this here in a little bit. But yeah, I love that. Of course, the score added to it, and just beautiful shots all around. Um, the biggest thing though for me was kind of jarring, was the editing, and I'll give examples here in the spoiler discussion. Um, the the story, like Marco touched on, I felt it did seem, overall it seemed kind of packed, right? They try to rush through it, I felt like, and maybe that has to do with the editing. I don't know how it was cut, but it did. Yeah, it just felt like it was rushed through, and there were some parts that were missing. Um, and again, I'll go over this here in a little bit, but I felt like it could have been a little more balanced between the two movies, like Marco was saying. Like it just felt like chapter or part one or just Dune was slow. I agree, it was slow, and I didn't love it after I went back and watched it after part two. So I saw part two, and then I went back and saw part one again. A lot of things made more sense, and I enjoyed it a little bit more. Um, but watching them back to back like that, I'm okay. You know what? Maybe they could have kind of balanced them out a little more, the storyline between the two. I don't know if Denny was like, we'll build this. I know he keeps mentioning part one, it was more about building the world, but I wonder if what he had planned to say for part two was just more than he thought. And so it was like, damn, well, we're already here. I'll have to cram, all this in here because we
Can
already
I
made
come in
part
on
one.
that if you don't
Yes, sir.
mind?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You mentioning like something you said there, kind of about like kind of almost like understanding and having things explained. There, I can't remember how you phrased it, but can you remember being in school and you were given a maths question and you couldn't do it, and the next day the teacher does it on the board, and it's like,
Yeah.
that makes so much sense. Have you
Yeah,
ever
it
had that
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas like all the information is in the book and the notes or whatever, but it's just easier when someone guides you through it. What
Yeah.
really helped me was when the day I saw Dune Part 2, I obviously went to, like a lot of people, and rewatched the first Dune,
Mm.
and then I watched like New Rockstar's Breakdown, and then I know Cosmic Wonder or something like that, a few other ones, and then it was almost like the stuff is there, the information is in the movie, but it's really subtle. Some parts, like, um, and it's just like they just point out and highlight all those things and help you join the dots.
Yeah.
And I feel
And
that that's almost
I,
necessary to get more out of it.
and I almost prefer a film that's like that. That's like it gives you space to kind of dive into it. And sometimes those films are just like, all right, you're insisting upon yourself too much, like from Family Guy, and like, okay, you're
Yeah,
like, for Tenet, that felt like that. Like, okay, you've
Yeah.
gone off the deep end. But here it's like, oh
man.
no,
You
once
see,
you understand a few things,
Tenet. You see,
Yeah.
I'm gonna die in this hill, man. Tenet is one of those movies that you need it. That you cannot watch that movie once and just go
Right.
and understand it. I
yeah,
mean,
Yeah.
I consider myself a relatively smart guy, but I had to watch that a few times and then rewatch and watch breakdowns to really get what from it. Now I can put it on and actually enjoy it. But I
Mhm.
totally get why people would be like, no.
Yeah.
yeah, no,
And
and that's one that I'm hoping on, future rewatches really develop for me. But Jay, I know we kind of stopped you in the middle of your thoughts. One thing I
No,
just
that
want
was
to
it.
say
No,
on what,
I was done. I just found that like I with every rewatch of the first one, or even today with the second one, and watching the breakdowns, I think are
yeah,
essential. Like really, if you haven't read the book, and now I'm reading the book, and it's like it's filling in all the blanks, and it's like, oh right, it's like it's just that kind of repetition. It's like they mention something in the movie, and when there's so much coming at you in these movies that you don't absorb it all the first time. But
yeah.
then when you watch a breakdown, or you're watching a movie, or you're having your second rewatch, that little thing that you didn't catch the first time makes more sense, and you're like, oh right, that's genius. Or like, I don't want to get into spoilers, but when we are, there's one little gem that I picked up on today going, how didn't I cop that the first time? But
Yeah.
yeah.
it, Shane, just like expanding upon that, and I'll spoil the first film if that's okay, Jay.
Yeah. I think it's okay to
Okay.
spoil the first film.
So he's having visions partway through about a mentor that's going to teach him how to ride the sandworm, and at the end he kills that person, and then it's like, okay, I'm not really understanding what the heck happened, but just like Shane said, I saw a breakdown where they compared him to kind of Doctor Strange, where he's seen all these multiple futures. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, actually, that
Yes.
makes
Yeah.
so much sense to me. Like that's
Yes.
actually really incredibly cool. I just was not, I wasn't smart enough to understand in the moment, or it just didn't click in the moment. So
But
Yeah.
I interpreted that as say like in World War II, you have Americans and you have Germans, and like
Mhm.
I'm sure there's people on both sides who killed the opposite person, like Americans who killed Germans and Germans who killed American, going, this guy might have had like a wife and kids, and
Yeah.
if it was a different set of circumstances, if you're born in different places, you could have been friends. So I would
yeah,
interpret him killing that guy as the alternative futures, that they didn't kill each other and they were actually friends,
yeah.
and he was a mentor, which is just that little gem is why I'm obsessed with this bloody movie at the moment.
Or you could even look at it a different way, like by him killing that guy was the launching point for him going to where he goes. So like that
Yeah,
conversation didn't really happen, but it's almost
yeah.
like subtext for what did happen.
Will
Anyways,
he save
I love
millions
that shit.
by doing
Yeah,
that, or will he kill billions by
there
doing
you
that?
go. Oh,
You know.
And that's
What
one of the things I
choices?
appreciate about this film, for my love of science fiction. It kind of has elements of time travel, if you think about it, right? So he's kind of having these visions of the future, right? Potential futures that he's seen in part one, and then we see them without getting too much into it in part two, and they're slightly altered because of one different thing that happened, and that altered that potential future. So I think that's something that we don't really talk about often. But the carryover of time travel and the rules of time travel and the ripple effects, right? To throw the stone in the pond and there's the ripple effect.
Mm.
That's something that's really interesting for me in terms of science fiction.
Yeah.
heck yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Like you said. So disclaimer. I forgot to mention this also, but I didn't read the books. I'm one of those who didn't read the book. Um, I'm not. If the source material is from a book, I will just say I probably haven't read it because I'm not big of a reader. But most of a couple of you here went to see the movie two, even three times. I actually went the opposite way, and I saw the original Dune the last couple of nights. I had to break it up because I was watching in the evening, just so I can get that context. So I kind of use that as my homework and as a little bit of a reference comparison to this one to kind of see what the differences are. But even then, I was telling my other buddies, like when I went back and to watch that one, a lot of stuff made sense just because I've seen the remake here, part one. If I would have seen that movie when I was young, or even now, just like a couple months ago, I probably wouldn't be able to follow what's going on. It was just so like convoluted. I was like, what the hell is this? But now, like you all were touching on, because I've seen it, um, the remake, which did a better job of portraying what was going on. And again, I don't know if that follows the book or not. From what I'm hearing, it doesn't really, but at least I can tell what was going on. And there were similarities between the 1984, the original Dune, and this part one here. So, yeah, so I agree with some of you what you were saying about comparing those two and things making sense when you go back and watch it. So one of the other things that I had a minor gripe with was the acting. That's probably my least of all the gripes. There's some of the acting that didn't come through, but again, I don't know if that had to do either with the writing. I don't know if it was just on them or they were just following direction. Um, either the direction, the screenplay, or because of the editing, some things that make sense. I don't know. We'll touch on that more, and I'll give some context and details on that one. But I do agree overall, all in all, this was technically great. All the technical aspects of this were really awesome, and I think Jose, you were the one that touched on this, or maybe it was Shane. I can't remember. You guys remember me, but like
Everyone
not
else
only a
is
movie that'll
gone.
stand. What's that?
Oh, sorry. You all disappeared. I couldn't tell. I was just there on my
Yeah.
own.
Oh,
I couldn't tell. Did I
oh
disappear
no,
for
yeah,
you?
we got you. Yeah.
It said disconnected for me.
Oh, right. Yeah, because you all disappeared and I was just there.
Oh,
But
but I'm
sorry.
good.
Go on. Yeah, I'm good now. Everyone's good.
Okay, good. All right, yeah. All right. Yeah, so it is technically great. I do no there's no like gripes for me on that end. And I was thinking after I got out of the movie, I was thinking, oh man, what this movie reminds me of something as far as like being technically great, but some other aspects were kind of lacking. Mostly the story. And then it dawned on me that I would probably put this in the same category as Gravity and Mad Max Fury Road, because both those movies were technically great. Um, Gravity and Mad Max Fury Road on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Like Gravity's more kind of like somber and peaceful because obviously they're in space. For those of you that seen it, but technically great. Man, when I saw that, I was just again appreciation for the technical aspects of it. I know a lot of people didn't like it because there wasn't really a story. It was just Sandra Bullock kind of trying to survive. Um, but it was kind of like Castaway in space, basically. But it was just really cool. I really liked aspects of that, and kind of similar Mad Max Fury Road. Right, there isn't really a story there. It's been a minute since I've seen it, but from what I recall, it just basically follows, you know, the main character. Remind me his name again.
Max,
No, yeah, but the actor's name. Sorry,
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy.
Sorry,
Hardy.
I'm
Thank you.
just
Yes,
unmuting
Hardy.
myself to laugh at Jose's joke.
Yeah,
That was good.
yeah, yeah. Max, yeah. Mr. Road, Fury Road. No, yeah, Tom Hardy, and which is similar to what the original Mad Max movies were, right? It's just some guy kind of going a day in the life, basically, and so this kind of reminded me of that. There wasn't really a major overarching plot. It kind of seemed like we were just kind of following Paul, go through a series of events, which the movie, that's what it is, right? But when you go in, you know that there's some overarching plot. And this one, I didn't really see that right from the get-go. So we can discuss, maybe you guys can point out some things and see if you agree with that or not. But
I actually agree with that point there. So excited to talk more about that.
Yeah. So yeah, technically great. I'd put it in those. And then Shane, earlier I was watching, I caught your Hope Show. For those of you that don't know, Shane does the Hope Show.
Thank you.
Again, links are in the description. Go check that out when you get a chance. But he brought this up when he was talking about this, and Eddie Money, shout out to Eddie Money Mendez. He brought up this good connection about being a cinematic experience, which I agree this movie was. If you have a chance, go see it in IMAX because it was filmed in IMAX. So definitely worthwhile if you can. But Avatar, he brought up Avatar, both the first and second one. And I know some of you out there, or even on this panel, don't really like it. I actually enjoyed those. I actually saw the first Avatar in 3D, and that, similar to this, was a great cinematic experience. So IMAX 3D, and it was awesome. I know James Cameron was awaiting the technology to make that movie, and even with the second one. And so that alone, just kind of by nature, is just a technically great achievement there for those films. And maybe that one had more of a plot, though. I don't know if you want to put that in the same category, but as far as cinematic experience, that was up there. So overall, I would say my impressions, I like this movie. I enjoyed it. I agree it wasn't a masterpiece. When I came out, I was like, okay, there's some things, like I mentioned, that were lacking there that could use a little more work, but I think it will stand the test of time. It could be up there with Lord of the Rings and Star Wars as far as, that world that is built there and what people follow. If not already, I'm sure there's people who are already into that world and love to be in there. And so, yeah, it's just after talking about it, doing all this research on it, I'm looking forward to going to see it again, honestly. So for that experience. And so, yeah, with that, and Marco, you said you had something you wanted to touch on.
No, just
else?
in terms of the plot, and we can get to that when we talk about that in the section. But just really quickly, Empire Strikes is asking, out of interest, where in the world are the movies shot? I think part 1 was shot in Jordan, and so do you guys know if part 2 was as well?
I remember Googling this. Usually when they look for like a desert or a kind of a Mars type landscape, they do typically go to Wadi Rum in Jordan. It's a desert landscape, but it looks like Mars. It's very red. That's where they filmed The Martian.
It's because all the spice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they filmed I think some Star Wars movies there as well. I'm pretty sure part of this movie was filmed there, and I got to go there about 3 years ago with a Jordanian. We went to Wadi Rum, and it's like some of the photos, it looks like you're in space, like when you're wearing normal.
They were talking about the rock formations look alien almost. Is that
it
pretty
looks like
surreal
Mars?
experience?
Like, you can understand why it's just very red sand and red rocks and stuff like that. It's pretty damn cool. I think was Indiana Jones one of the original trilogy filmed near there as well.
Last Crusade.
Yeah, the Petra in Jordan.
Yeah, that was so yeah, you're right. That's one of the things I did research and I looked up because I was curious about also. So yeah, Empire Strikes. Part of it was in Jordan for the rock formations because they did say they were otherworldly, and it did add to the scenery and the environments here in the movie. So Jordan was what was part of it, and the other because of all the sand, the biggest sand dunes they found in Abu Dhabi. So that was another shot. Another place they went to is Abu Dhabi, and I can't other than those two, I wasn't sure where else.
Probably the volume for everything else in between.
I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was listening to some interviews, and I think Denis said he didn't want to film on the volume.
Really?
Or if he did, it was very minimal because he wanted a lot of natural light in this movie, and he wanted to minimize that. So I could be wrong. I can't remember if it was he completely didn't use it volume at all, or if it was very minimal. So
this is just me speculating because this guy used it for the Batman, right?
I think they used the volume for Batman. Yeah.
Yes,
I think the DP did, right, Jose?
100% the volume was used in the Batman. But yeah, most of it was shot either in the studio or in Jordan, according to the internet here. And yeah,
Okay.
that's where they shot it. Lawrence of Arabia, The Martian, Mission to Mars, Transformers: Revenge of the Fall, Enter Prometheus, Force Awakens, things like that. Yeah, all
And they
shot over
build a lot of real sets too, yeah,
there.
which is awesome.
Yeah, and then the sets were in Budapest. A good portion of the film was captured there in the studio sets, and then the rest was on location.
For this movie here, you're saying for part Dune Part
hmm
Two?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Nice. Thanks. So when you say studio, that's still not the volume or no?
It doesn't specifically
It is
state.
okay.
It just
Yeah.
states
They'll never tell us.
it was a
This is
Yeah.
one
They'll
that they
never
want
say.
us to
Yeah.
like. All right, this was filmed the
Yeah.
old school way, but I bet you there were pickups that were on the volume. I bet you.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it might be studio. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I have to go back and I thought it was either Denis or Greg Fraser. One of them said that they wanted to minimize use of the volume or not use it at all because of the natural light aspect. So, but yeah, correct me if I'm wrong there in the chat or in the comments later on. So that was that. Anyone else wanted to touch on anything that
Just
any of us said
one
so far?
little thing. When
Yep.
I lived in Abu Dhabi for 2 years, and like a lot of the open shots you see of just the sand dunes,
Mm.
that was just like I used to drive by there out to the hotel where just to go for a swim and go to the gym. And I know that like the students I was teaching, like especially like the Emiratis, they're really desert proud. Like they
Mm.
love the desert. Like they
Wow.
love the dunes, and they get like jeeps and stuff and drive around the desert and stuff like that, or dune buggies, and go out and like have like barbecues in the middle of nowhere. And they're really proud of their culture and their landscape. Like, so I'd say this movie is just doing so well in Abu Dhabi right now. I'd imagine, especially that like
Yeah.
it is at Abu Dhabi. It's like a movie dedicated. It's like a love letter to the desert, So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. It definitely well shot there. And one thing I did read also is that going back to the natural light thing, despite that, they were saying, I think it was Greg Fraser, he was saying that that there was, I think this was an interview, an article that I was reading, that he, even though he wanted the natural light, sometimes it was too much because they would mute out all the colors. Obviously, this movie is very colorful. There's a lot of different colors going on. There's an overall tone of like browns and orange, but in inside indoor places underground, there's kind of different themes. But to avoid having, the sun kind of mute everything, all the colors outside, they started filming during a what is it, like an eclipse. I think it's like a red sun eclipse type of thing, just to kind of block out some of the sunlight, so that way they didn't have to do as much in post production. And so I thought that was really cool, kind of cool fun fact to
Mm,
read. And I was like, oh man, talk about like either they timed that or it was just coincidence and like let's go,
mm,
let's get out there. It reminds me in the Aviator. You remember where what they wanted to get that shot, but there was no clouds in the sky, and so like people were just sitting. And what was it? What's um, I'm blanking on Leonardo DiCaprio's character on The Aviator.
was it
He's based on
Charles? Was it was it
um,
was it Charles something?
the creator of the Spruce Goose, that big plane. It was
Yeah, I'll Google it 1 second.
yeah. Well, anyways, he was
Howard
making a
Hughes.
move. Howard, thank you, Howard Hughes. That's what it was. Yeah, good man, Howard Hughes. And so he was making a movie, and he wanted clouds in the sky, but it was just like a completely cloudless day, and he was pissed. He's like, "There's no clouds in the sky," and then he had all his actors and pilots just kind of on standby waiting. Yeah, it was just funny. So that kind of reminds me of that. Some of the things that you don't think about when you film on location and stuff. So really cool. So one of the similarities here that I'm going to make to Madam Web, I'm going to brace myself. You guys were talking about the masterpiece, and this is something I added in my initial post on Facebook, my initial impressions, is that you guys already touched on this, but so what I noticed is that the same the same amount of let's see, how can I put this? So we, people were bashing Madam Web, right? Again, same thing with Morbius, and it seemed like to me at one point it was just just because it was for the fun, the sake of bashing it, just to bash a movie, like for meme reasons, just like, oh, this movie's so bad, it's not garbage or whatever. Just to kind of go along with the hype, just because that was the end thing to do, quote unquote, the end thing. With this, I kind of felt the same, where people were going in as soon as a couple or a few people started saying it was a masterpiece, it was great, then other people started to kind of follow suit. And it touches back to what you guys were saying, and that try not to let people influence your decisions or how you feel about a movie. I think there may have been some of that going on. Obviously, I can't prove that unless people come out and outright say that that was the case, if they even know that what was going on. But um, yeah, I don't know. And I'm sure there's people out there who legit feel that way. That's just the best movie to them. Which, to each their own. That's all good. If
Yeah.
who's to say that's not their favorite movie? If that's yours, then take it, own it. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of feel like in the same way people were quick to bash on Madam Web, people were quick to jump on and say this is a masterpiece. Um, and
I
so yeah, just something that I noticed, and I don't know if you guys have that same thought.
No, I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from. Like, I mean, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with letting something marinate and think. I'd be reluctant to call anything a masterpiece, to be honest. But the more I see it, the more I still thinking about it, and this will stand the test of time, hopefully. And that's when I, maybe bestow that kind of label on it,
Yeah,
But I don't know if someone is saying this is a masterpiece, and then also thinks the sequels trilogies are masterpiece, I can't take that seriously. I know everyone's entitled to their opinion, but like if someone's comparing this movie to something else, like I know, let's say Thor: Love and Thunder, and saying that's a masterpiece as well, it's kind of like, what's your rating scheme?
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
how do you? And I know some people be overwhelmingly positive, but there's there has to be a standard, like, you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
but yeah, I know it's I can see why people would say this is a masterpiece, and enough rewatches, maybe I might be one of those people too. But at the moment, maybe I think it's maybe just underneath the masterpiece for me.
yeah. And I don't, I definitely don't want to take anything away from anybody who does think this is a masterpiece. I just wanted to kind of put this stream together to show that, there are some people like Marco touched on that who kind of have different feelings about this and that who don't think it's a masterpiece, and that's what we're going to kind of dive into here. Another thing that I was going to add is that, yeah, now I'm drawing blank again. I was to say, so we're talking about masterpieces compared to Madam Web.
One thing I
Um,
can add to that
yeah,
is
go
I
ahead.
feel like in this era, we're kind of in the Rotten Tomatoes era that a lot of people can't really separate themselves from the scores or what they see on the internet, right? They're
Mm,
not really willing. And I get it, going to the theater is expensive. So a lot of people are like, I'm not going to waste my hard earned money to go
yeah,
watch a movie that everyone is saying is bad, right? So I'm not
yeah,
going to waste my time doing that. But sometimes I feel like they try to jump on the hype train, whether it's positive or negative, and they jump on it and they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's terrible, it's terrible." I'm like, "Well, did you see the movie?" No, but I heard or I saw the
yeah,
Rotten Tomato score.
Yeah, man, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
yeah.
You
No,
know,
yeah, that's
yeah, like you could use. I don't think there's anything wrong with using reviews. Or what's better than using reviews is if I say have three people who I would consider have similar taste or good taste in movies, and they're all saying, "Nah, just save your money, wait until it comes out and watch it on streaming, or get the DVD or whatever."
yeah,
If you're trying to save money, but like I think that's okay with that, to kind of use it as a gauge if you're going to spend the money to go to the movies or not, and of course they could influence it the other way as well. It's not going to influence, personally, me. It won't influence how I feel about the movie. I'll see the movie. It's like, I'll whatever I feel, whatever I feel. But
yeah,
you might use that as a little indicator to go, oh, maybe I can save the money on this because cinema is bloody expensive at the moment. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But if you don't, I don't think you have a right to an opinion if you haven't read, if you haven't watched the movie, or
If you
like
haven't
if
seen
you're
over
talking.
200 movies, I think you don't have an opinion.
No, but if you haven't actually sat down and watched the series, that you you haven't seen it. You just heard people say it's good or bad. If you haven't watched the movie, and you're just hype jumping on like what Jose's saying and just saying, okay, yeah, it's bad because I heard it's bad. You
yeah,
gotta see it. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
You know why though? It's the world is actually way more fun and just way more simple if you look at things in black and white like that. Like just to hate on something or to love something is way more fun to be like, oh, I'm kind of lukewarm on it.
yeah,
And it's also like, oh, just either it's binary. It's either I hate it or I love it and we
yeah.
move
yeah,
on.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
It
Something's
makes
a
it
one or
easier.
something's a 10. There are no numbers in
right. There's
between.
no nothing else in
Yeah,
between.
yeah, yeah, yeah. One thing about Ian, if he's still watching, he knows there's numbers in between. He knows there's fractions and decimal points because
Yeah.
he's never given a whole number for a rating. It's always like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is kind of maybe like 7 point, I'd say 53, 50, 53 55ths. You know, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
right.
Rounding up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've always found it like a pet peeve of mine. Like when you're talking to someone and they mention the film that's doing bad, and whether it's the Rotten Tomato score, yada yada, and you're like, well, did you see it? No, but they're like laughing, like they're kind of like celebrating the demise of the film, and I'm like,
Yeah.
they didn't. Most of the time, they don't just go out to be like, hey, let's make a really bad movie. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people, they tried and it failed. But more times than not, that's usually what happens, right? With these films, they're not Dune Part Two. Like all these films go out to try to be something entertaining for us, and then ultimately either they're successful or they fail. But it's just like when I see the people that jump on that train and they're laughing and oh yada yada, the movie was so terrible, blah blah blah. And it's like, dude, but did you see it? Nah, but why am I going to waste my time doing that? And it's just like, well, then maybe don't speak on it then. Like
It
And
is
I'll-
tough.
I'll-
Go ahead, Shannon. I'll say what I'm
I'll
going to say.
counter that, like in a way, like that. Madam Web, I have not seen. I do not know if it's a good movie or a bad movie. But my gut feeling tells me I probably wouldn't appreciate it, so therefore I'm not going to sit down and watch it. But I don't know if it's good or not. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So yeah.
And sometimes, what people's their hate can get intensified because it's almost like less a battle against those folks that made the film and more like against a studio or against capitalism. It's like Madam Web existed because they're trying to keep that Spider-Man license and because, they're trying to do their own cinematic universe. And you could still have something that's fun in that, right? Like there still could be artist that, contributed to something that's just kind of unique. And even if it's not like good for conventional standards, it still could be fun to watch, but there's like very specific reasons why that exists. And most of these, I mean, all of these exist to make money, but some of them, I think the studios are smart enough to understand, like, let's give this artist their time to have this space because it's probably going to be something pretty good that the audiences are going to react to. But then you got Blade Runner that didn't make any money and that 2049 was great. So it's always it's a tricky conversation to have.
Yeah. So
Dune 2 hasn't made that much money. Well, okay, sorry. You actually get me the thought to Google this because I was curious, how's it doing? And as of the 14th of March 2024, pardon?
How is it doing?
Yeah, how's it doing?
Dune.
Like, I wasn't intending on doing that, but we'll go with that. How's it doing? So, I don't know how accurate these numbers are, but as of the 14th of March 2022, the worldwide total is 388.6 million. But here's the kicker. Hollywood Reporter estimated, now this could be absolute nonsense, that the film needs to gross around 500 million just to break even.
Wow.
Ouch.
Wow.
Yeah,
To
I can imagine that.
Okay. I thought the budget was less. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just adding in everything in that one. I don't know. Wow, that's a lot. Interesting. Yeah. So real quick, touch on what you were touching on, Jose, there about just certain. You kind of sounds like you were kind of implying just certain aspects of the movie that people can and can't like. Again, that's why I have more appreciation for the details, and then in particular when you were giving your thoughts on that, I thought of Flash, for instance. Oh, you were talking about the work that goes into movies and just kind of people bashing it and not giving it the time of day. Even though they want these movies to ultimately be good. And there's two differences. And Shane, you touched on this earlier, right? There's movies that come out for entertainment that are art form or just purely entertainment. And sometimes movies know what they want. They own it. If it's just fun and entertainment, like Marco was saying, also, they own that. Like for example, I did Thanksgiving. I mentioned I'm a big fan of horror. That movie Thanksgiving, they owned that, just having fun with it, and you can tell when they made it. And I enjoyed it for it because it just seemed like a quote fun movie. And I did that one movie on that as well. You can catch that on this channel, but yeah, they didn't try to take it too seriously. At least I didn't think so. And I had a good time. So there's a lot of movies like that where they just have fun, and they're not trying to take it seriously. And there's other movies that try to take themselves seriously, but they end up flopping, right? So that's whether that's, I presume that's not intentional, but sometimes that just happens. And so going back to the work that goes into these, there's people who didn't want to watch want to watch Flash, the latest Flash movie, because of Ezra. They just didn't like Ezra Miller, what he said for what was going on with him, and so they totally wrote off the movie. But that discounts everything else, all the other people who worked on that movie, all the other time and effort that went into that. And again, the people have their own morals, things why they want to watch a movie or they don't. And I'm not trying to take that away from anybody. You have your own reasons. Okay, that's all fine. But just consider, there's more that goes into these movies than just a one actor, right? There's just a lot of people who work on this. And sometimes it is a cash grab. There's movies out there, they just want to make some money. It is what it is. Again, you just have to realize that's what they're doing and take it as it is and decide if you want to go see it or not. But it's just, sometimes that just happens. It's kind of unfortunate when people just brush it off because of, one particular person, and they just kill it for everyone else, which again, kind of
that's very true. Sometimes, and then also with the Flash, there was a lot of combination of various factors, right? Not just Ezra, but the whole announced the reboot, right? The DCU, all that. So people were like, why bother? People like we were talking about earlier, it's expensive to go to the theater. So people were like, why am I going to spend my money to watch this movie that ultimately won't matter?
Michael Keaton.
Yeah, yep. That's the only point there.
In flip-flops.
That was enough for me, but some people were like, well, especially the younger generation, right? The Gen Z or the TikTok era, like they're like, we don't care about Michael Keaton. You know what I mean? Like, who's that?
Well, they'd lose interest after 15 seconds, so they wouldn't get that far. So.
True.
Like for me, I like that. Like, that's the Batman I grew up watching, right? So I wanted to see Michael Keaton, right?
Yeah,
but
same. Yeah. So the other thing I was going to touch on that I couldn't remember earlier was Shane, you also mentioned recency bias, and I think that's going back to the popularity of the film, and that is definitely a thing, right? People, they come out and they just have their initial thoughts, and I agree with you. That's kind of why I don't like giving my ratings after I see something. I'll kind of, if I do, I'll kind of say, hey, this is just my initial like out of the theater response, and usually that's a pretty higher score. Sometimes it could go the other way, but either way, you're kind of, when you come out of the movie, you feel a certain way, but after it settles down and you think about it, then that score may change. And so, that's the thing.
I feel like that's...
Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I just feel like that's for like the real sickos amongst us, right? To like continue to think about a movie once it's done and like want to go watch the breakdowns, and like not everyone views media in that way. Some people like Gigi just want to watch it and be done with it. Let's not even talk about it. Just it happened and we move on. It's like, let's analyze the themes. She's like, please shut it.
I find though that that's when I know you're onto a good one though. When you're like it's like you're trying to get to sleep and you're like, and how did he know that happened, and how did Bruce Wayne get back into Gotham even though so that's one for Jose.
I'm triggered immediately.
But you know what I mean? Bring that up, right?
But I put it down to he's still well connected. He's a billionaire. But it's
he had one relationship with Alfred. That's it. No one else.
Listen, if he can get into Hong Kong and get Lao with all these like smugglers and stuff like that, and he can convince the entire ballet to just cancel their night in ballet, he knew people. He knew people, man. But,
no, that's more like it, Mr. Wayne.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, he was in the area in Batman Begins, right? So he had a few people that maybe he could have, like, hey, he was in the same area, so maybe. But I'm like, that's never explained. They're just like, oh, it happened, and it's like, wow. Anyways,
that's called pulling a Dune, where they just don't explain it; it just happens.
Yeah, it just happens.
That's kind of like, that's something I wouldn't dock at a star for that, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I'd just be like, he got back in,
Or Dane, Bane. He has the bomb, and it's like, why not have it explode sooner? Or he's like, no, let's wait until Batman fixes himself, and then we'll do it. You know what I mean? It's like,
we all know Jose's pet peeve now.
There you go.
But in fairness, they are reasons why maybe it's not a 5-star movie as opposed to so.
Yeah,
I still think Dark Knight Rises.
I had fun with the Dark Knight Rises. When I put it on, I still have the nostalgia.
That's okay. You're a fake fan. That's gone. You've exposed. It's fine.
And me.
Sorry. What were you asking me?
No, I was gonna. It sounded like you were gonna go on to something else that other thoughts on recency bias.
I can't remember how you. Oh yeah, no. It's just the thoughts on recency bias are like, I think it's good. Like what Marco says, he describes us as sickos who keep thinking about the movie. But like, essentially, like it's art. It's supposed to elicit some sort of an emotional response. If you
Yeah.
connect to a movie like that, if you go see your favorite band live and they absolutely knock it out of the park, you'll want to go see them the next night as well if you can.
Yeah.
You know, you listen to an album that you just love. Like some of the best albums that I've listened to. I don't know. Bon Iver's second album, the Mars Volta's first album, some
Mhm.
Tool albums. I liked them at the start, but I was like, I can't get enough of this. And the more you listen to them, the more little intricate details you hear, and the more you enjoy. And I think like a good movie is sometimes like that, where you watch it a few times, like the Matrix movie. I watched it, I loved it, but I didn't know exactly what was going on, so I had to go
Yeah.
back and revisit it multiple times to piece. And you have those little eureka moments going, "That's me. That's why he did that." I get,
Hmm.
and I think I
Yeah.
love that. But the recency bias thing, yeah, there could be a bit of that, as in like we've been starved of like come on, since you know pandemic a few years ago, and then you have the writer strike as well. It hasn't been steady flow of blockbuster after blockbuster after blockbuster, you know. So we
Yeah.
need to latch onto these ones that are just really really good.
You can
Yeah.
appreciate them a bit more. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, to add on to that here, Empire Strikes saying, when I walked out of the theater after Phantom Menace, I convinced myself it was amazing, the best thing on earth. Well, he didn't say that, I added that because of the excitement of the release, but deep down in his heart, he was like, "WTF?" Yeah, man, I think we've all felt like that. We've all been there, so you're not alone on that one. Um, but yeah, anyone else have any other thoughts before we conclude here this non-spoiler discussion? Well, unfortunately, folks, it looks like I was having technical difficulties early in the stream, and as a result, I ended up losing part of the recorded stream. I did go back and check for myself, and yeah, sure enough, I was able to only salvage, or the only part that was recorded was the non-spoiler discussion and some of the spoiler discussion, but it was only like very minimal part of it, and so I just uploaded the non-spoiler discussion, hence why I was able to upload this video. But yeah, it just sucks. I wasn't able to save or recover the spoiler discussion, which really sucks because we had a great discussion here with my panelists, my guest here, and we went into a lot of the details and examples and share our thoughts on some of the elements of the film. And so yeah, maybe in the future we'll try it again, give it another go around, round two, with either some or all of the same panelists. Well, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But overall, to summarize, I really did like the movie. Dune Part Two was really good. There are some things I think I could have done better. The story, for example, in regards to, or I should say, the writing in regards to the story and the character development and some of the relationships, I think could have been done a little better. I think it could have been a little better balance between the two movies. It felt like where the part one was, for sure, it was slow, but it was simple and effective. Right, it was more streamlined. Right, it just kind of, it was easy to follow. Where in the second one, it kind of seemed rushed, and they tried to cram a lot into the part two as far as the story. And so I think those could have been a little more balanced as far as content of the story. I So I like them both for different reasons, right? Dune one, the story was probably eh, focused a little more. It did a better job on part one on the story elements, but on part two, obviously there was more. It suffered because of how much probably content was left. I'm not sure what the thought process was on that, but I can personally tell the difference between the two. So otherwise, Dune 2, like everyone's saying, I agree, is technically great. That's kind of one of the things you notice, right? A lot of people who are talking about the movie, they mention how technically great it is, the sound, the cinematography, the score, but I haven't really heard anyone touch on how great the story or the characters were. I don't like that, could just be me. So let me know in the comments if you disagree with that and you actually really enjoyed the story or the characters as well as everything else. So something I noticed, but yeah, I would probably put this movie in the same category, like I mentioned in the beginning, as Mad Max Fury Road, um, Gravity. Those are both technically great movies as well, and with not a huge regard in story content. So this one would fit in there as well. Avatar, maybe to some extent, was also technically great. Avatar, the Blue People, not the Last Airbender, but that one had more of a story, in my opinion, that I think. But I can see the argument to where that could go in that category as well. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. I recommend it if you have a chance to go watch it in IMAX because it was filmed in IMAX, so it was meant to be seen. I definitely recommend going to see that. And who knows, maybe they may release it in the future. I've noticed their theaters and studios are kind of re-releasing movies in theaters again. So if you miss it this time for whatever reason, hopefully in the future they'll bring it back and you can go check it out again, either do part one or part two. So yeah, but either way, go check it out. As of this outro recording, I did go see the movie again for a second time, and so I was able to sneak in there and go watch it in D box. So D box is Century Theaters. You know, they have the moving seats, and that's what they call their moving seat um, feature. There's D box, whereas Regal has 4DX, where they add either aromas, I think, or mists or something they spray at you in addition to the moving seat. So that's Regal, but Century has D-Box. So if any of you are able to go see it, experience the movie in that, either D-Box or 4DX, I do recommend it because it definitely adds to an already immersive film. So yeah, really, really great experience. But on my second watch through, I noticed some of the things that bothered me. Again, I mentioned the story or the writing and some of the editing. I think probably could have been done a little better. I noticed some scenes were cut, but the second watch through, they didn't seem to bother me as much. I don't know if that's because I'd already went back and saw the first Dune movie and went back and saw the original 80s Dune just to kind of have some comparison there. So I don't know. The second time went through, it wasn't, they didn't bother me as much, but still, those things are still present. And that's what keeps the movie from being a 10 out of 10 or a 5 out of 5 or a masterpiece, if you want to call it. But yeah, it's still really good. And so, yeah, that was basically our stream. Thank you again for joining and tuning in. As usual, the links in the description below to my guests. Thank you again for joining me, my panelists, my guest panelists, and those of you who were watching or tried watching. Apologies again. Sorry it was having issues, but those of you who got this on the replay, thank you again. I appreciate your time and my guest time. And with that, we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a good one. Take care.